Hi, I'm Sam Forster. I'm the founder of K12 Lift. I am here with my colleague Shannon Houston, and we are going to talk about the one question that we hope every teacher, principal, and academic coach in every school district in America will be able to answer about the instruction in their districts or schools.
Is my Tier 1 instruction effective, and for whom?
It seems like everybody should be able to answer that question, right?
But I think you're yeah, okay, is it working? So there's a distinction there between good and effective.
Yeah, good point.
And that's something we've talked about before is this a good teacher? Like that, or that's a good teacher. Like when that gets said, what does that mean exactly? And how there should be a distinction between a good teacher, which could encompass someone who's just really good with kids. Like kids love to be around them. They love coming to their class. They build relationships with parents. There's just the things that are...
a good colleague.
Yeah, right? They enjoyed working with them. But then there's effective.
I take your point. I think you're right.
Yeah. Which one is having the impact that you ultimately need to have on student outcomes? But it's funny because I'm surprised still. Like we started asking this question of audiences that we're in front of, audiences of educators at all levels, teachers up to state leaders, asking the question, not even asking the question, but saying, what is the question that we're supposed to ask and answer before we would recommend a student needs a Tier 2 intervention? And I've been surprised repeatedly, and we've asked that a dozen times now at least to an audience and had an uncomfortable silence and blank stares for a bit, and then one person timidly raises their hand and says, was instruction effective? Like they'll say some version of that and we'll say, yes, that in fact is the answer. And the surprising part about it is that there wasn't a resounding, everybody says, was instruction effective? Did the student receive effective Tier 1? This is the model that was set up 25 years ago. I don't know. It's been a long time in play, right? So generations have come through at this point with this tiered intervention model. And we are now to a point where the history, I don't know, the oral tradition around it has been lost even. So where people don't actually know, they're like, I don't know. We just tier students.
Right. Right. That they don't challenge the logic.
Yeah.
Right. When you explain to them that the reason we're supposed to ask that question first is that it may not be the kid.
Right.
Like if the student didn't receive effective instruction to start with, then why would we conclude that they need an intervention?
Right.
Maybe they just need good Tier 1 instruction. I'd probably do it.
Right.
They accept that.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been with you in the room. That's that answer is not at the ready.
Right.
For many, and I'm wondering, why do you think that is?
I think that just how we started this conversation with what is good it's been hard for people to know what exactly was effective instruction.
Man, I walked right into that trap.
Yeah.
Because it's true, right? But how many examples can we name of principals who are looking at evidence of effectiveness, right, as we would present it? And it challenges their thinking about who is, quote, a good teacher, because their subjective interpretation of what's happening in the room is all good. And yet they see that their students are moving backward relative to their peers. Of course, that doesn't mean the students aren't learning, but they're not learning quickly enough to keep up. Said another way, that instruction's not effective, right? And they struggle with that. They struggle with the qualitative assessments that they have made, not reconciling with the evidence.
Right. Well, and that maybe they're using evidence such as this teacher has 80% of students at level 3 or higher. So they're a terrific teacher.
The conflation of good instruction and percent proficient.
Right.
Another Well, okay, so but that goes back to the question, right? How do you answer the question, is my tier 1 instruction effective? And some people do conflate proficiency. If they see 80%
Right.
proficient in a room, they assume the instruction's good.
Right.
And that misses the point.
Yeah. I mean, if putting myself in the shoes of someone who's trying to answer that question, I feel like it is very nuanced. It's hard to know. If I don't have a really clear set of guidelines around how to make that decision, I understand why people have looked for a proxy, which is, I think, what's happened. Over time, we've started to come up with a different, maybe a more efficient way or easier way of tiering students. And we've just kind of said, okay, well, if a student is level 2, they're obviously not on grade level. They're below grade level. They need an intervention. They need something a little bit more than just the typical tier 1. And so they're, painting with a really broad brush there, like any kid who is level 2.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we've heard that out in the field, right?
Right, and you can see how that happened when all that was available was year-end data, right? That's where
Right,
tier 2
yeah.
came into these definitions, at least in Florida. I mean, each state's got their own flavor, but those kids are by definition below grade level. And since they couldn't answer the question, was our tier 1 instruction effective for the student? I mean, put yourself in their shoes. With the evidence that they are given, either as reported by the state through the state assessment or by their third-party instruments that they're buying through a vendor, that question's not being asked or answered, right?
Yeah.
So they do have to turn to a proxy.
You'd have to be a detective otherwise, right? Like
You
go into the records and try to
Sure,
find who
yeah.
did that student have, and
And you would have to have an analytic capacity
Yeah.
that would be extraordinary,
Right.
honestly. So yeah, they take this thing as proxy, this below grade level as a proxy for the student needs an intervention. And I'll pause for a second to say there are different kinds of interventions, right?
Sure.
There's extra time,
Right.
meaning they did receive effective instruction, they're so far behind, they need extra time, they will
Right.
catch up. And I think you can make the argument that a tier 2 kid needs that.
Yeah.
But do they need another bite at the apple, a different type of curriculum, a different kind of instruction? You can't come to that conclusion if their first go was not good.
Right.
And so anyway, I just wanted to make that distinction. The point I was driving at before, though, is that I can now see, as you're laying out, that people use this level 2 thing as a proxy at the end of the year. When Florida went to 3 times a year assessment, that habit of practice of taking the level and conflating it with a need for tiered interventions went.
It persists.
It persists, right? They're applying that
Yes.
same thing
Hadn't
to
even
the
thought of
first
that.
assessment of the year, the second assessment, even though what is being called a tier 2 kid might be a student we see it all the time, that student's in the 70th
Yep.
percentile, 80th percentile, still being considered a quote level 2 student because they are taking a scale score from the beginning of the year before they've had any instruction and comparing it to an end of year outcome.
Right.
And then kid needs interventions. And that makes my head want to explode. We're off topic. It isn't directly related to what is the most important question every educator should be able to ask and answer in a school.
But it is, though, because if you're being encouraged to look at data in a certain way or automatically funnel kids into tier 2, it doesn't give you the opportunity to try to do that reflection on whether instruction was effective.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would people know what that question should be if they're being encouraged by external forces beyond their control to look elsewhere? So anyway, I think that just goes back to why do we think it is that people can't answer that question? I think we have created a situation over time where that's the logical outcome of of the policies that have been in place and the way in which we have provided data and the oral traditions around them.
You're saying we with a capital W,
Yes,
not
not us, not K12. That's
Yeah.
why we exist, actually.
to not do that way anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, when we ask this of audiences and we come around to the point that we should be able to answer this question, of course, then the next thing is, well, how do we do that? And we go through the traditional ways we've looked at data and then the counter point that we'd like to offer. If we looked at it this way, we could actually answer the question.
So I feel like we've talked a lot about the need to answer the question, and we've talked a bit about why people don't, and that it's difficult with the data that is provided. I'm wondering if we should be more specific about why it's difficult and what we might do instead that is not difficult at all.
So the most basic way in which we have used assessment data since the beginning of time, it seems, is to find the scale score that a student earned at a given point in time, and then look to see whether that goes up. And regardless of how it's displayed, the feedback is if it goes up, that's good, right? Like, right? Up is good, more is better, sure. And, people do have charts that they can look up, to see what the different achievement levels would be if a student hits this scale score.
At the end of the year.
Importantly,
yep.
This is what their level would be. So that tells me how many points I need to go up over the course of the year. But the big thing that's missing there is context, right? Like there's no, I have no idea from looking at a single student's scale score going up over time, whether that's good. Like good enough for that kid, good enough in the context of
how's everybody else doing?
Yeah, my classroom, my state, other fourth graders, how much is it supposed to go up? What is good? And that seems to always be the question that we come back to. What is good?
I remember that now. We used to do that in trainings.
Yeah, is this
right?
good?
And we'd say, we'd offer an example, like, okay, let's pretend anybody got a fourth grader in here. Or your fourth grader comes to you and says, hey, Mom, my scale score went up by 12 points.
Woohoo! Yeah, I don't know.
Is that good? Am I proud? Should I be concerned?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Right.
Don't know. So what should people do instead?
So, thankfully, there is a metric reported right alongside the scale score in most places that are using a normed test, which is the percentile ranking. So instead of looking at the scale score and then trying to make meaning of this number that feels arbitrary, we can look at the ranking of the student that was based on the scale score, right? Like how did they compare to peers at that time of year when they earned that scale score?
Yep.
If they were in the 50th percentile, we know they were kind of in the middle of the pack. And we can follow that number. We can look to see, does that number go up or down over time? And then I have immediate meaning, right? Like I know, okay, my student's in the middle of the pack at the beginning of the year. Are they still in the middle at the middle of the year? Or have they dropped a little bit? Are they losing ground?
They gain ground.
Or did they gain ground? Are they now in the 70th
if your
percentile
ranking goes up by 12 points, you should be pretty thrilled with that.
Right. Yes, that means you were lapping the other students in your peer group.
Learning more quickly.
Right. So that number, which is, by the way, more universally understood than a scale score to anyone, just empirically in the world, right? Like we use percentiles all the time.
Describe height and weight.
Yeah,
and
since any parent who has
circumference
taken
of our heads.
Yep. Yeah, so it's already well known, even if you're not a parent. If you yourself went through school and you took the SAT, right? You got a percentile ranking, and people used to talk about it. I feel like it was something I learned in high school. So once you tell someone that, usually, even if they can't define it, maybe they struggle to give the formal definition of a percentile.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, well, if your kid's in the 80th percentile for height, are they short or tall? People are like, they're tall, like they just kind of know. So it's universally understood. It's right there, and it gives you that immediate context. So that's the first layer, the first kind of way that we propose that we use data differently, still at the student level. What are the two windows of time we should be looking at when we're measuring growth? And this is another.
What's the baseline? What am I comparing to?
What's the baseline? Okay. Exactly. Like when I say, what is my student's incoming ability? What do I mean by that? When I say ability, I mean at that moment in time, what the student has demonstrated they know about the content.
There it is. A capacity to do third grade
skills,
math standards.
Yes.
Right.
So I've used the word incoming loosely in groups with my own definition in my head, and then realized people thought I meant the beginning of the year. So even before Florida went to 3 times a year standardized assessment, there was, standard progress monitoring instruments that, iReady, STAR, MAP that people use, and they would give those roughly 3 times a year. And that beginning of the year look was the one that people would say incoming. And it would
told
say
us where they were.
So people would say we have to get students tested as early as possible because we need to know where they are. That was always the way we'd say it, like where they are.
Yep.
And so I would have to adjust and say, okay, when I say incoming, what I mean is where did they end the prior year? In terms of that final assessment that they took in the prior grade level. Mm-hmm. And people are skeptical of that idea because they'll say, well, that was different content. How can you be comparing, now we're on new standards.
Yep. And here's where
different
the
teacher
percentile ranking
exactly.
comes back in. Okay.
Right. So if we've already established that we're going to look at percentile rankings, then that takes care of that, right? Because now what I want to know is what was the percentile ranking of that student in their content with their peers last year on the assessment where they gave it their best try, most likely. Yeah. Not always, but on the whole, when we're looking at aggregates, more students are going to try harder on that final assessment because it's the high stakes one, right? Like it's the one that counts for a lot of reasons. And then that one at the beginning of the year, we know from people being honest with us over time that we kind of downplay it a little bit. Like, oh, we just don't worry about it too much. We don't necessarily explain to students why it matters. Mm-hmm. Or over time, students start to learn that they figure out the system. They realize, oh, hey, if I score low on this first one, then I get celebrated at the end of the year for my growth.
Because not everybody, most people are comparing the end of year to the beginning of year,
in
not
scale
to
score.
The prior year.
Yeah. And so they're looking, and so, I can show a lot of growth. Well, that's fun. I'll get some kind of prize.
Yeah.
They figure it out. They're pretty smart, So if we're using percentiles and we're anchoring to the prior year, it's going to give us a very different impression, most likely, of what's happening. Mm-hmm. Are we, if we're doing a reflection on teaching, did the teaching that happened this year allow that student to maintain their standing with their peers or not? Right? Like, because one of the things that we do ask audiences a lot is, would you agree that the basic job of a teacher is to teach a year of content over the course of a school year? Like that's the job, right? And everyone says yes. Everyone's like, yeah, this was pretty much what I'm here to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like I have a curriculum, I have a year of content, and my job is to teach it over the course of a year so that by the end of the year, the student has been exposed to the grade level content. Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, what we've realized is that if a student maintains their percentile ranking over the course of a school year, that means they are learning a typical amount, which is roughly about a year, a year of content in a year's time. Mm-hmm. So that's something we can now look at. And we can look at it not just for an individual student, but across a classroom of students or a grade level of students. We can see at a bare minimum, did students maintain their percentile rankings, increase them or decrease them on average? And there's a metric that allows us to do that, which might be a little wonky for this conversation.
It almost certainly is.
But for the statisticians watching, we do know about normal curve equivalence, and that's what we use. But it's essentially looking to see whether percentile rankings on the whole are going up or down over time after the year of instruction. With just those two shifts of using the prior year as the anchor, using percentile rankings, a teacher can know whether what they brought to the table in terms of instruction over the course of the year, whether it resulted in the desired effect. Mm-hmm.
So the point is, if I'm following your argument, the point is that some percentage of students in a given classroom should be growing quickly enough that their percentile rankings stay the same or go up.
Mm-hmm. What's the percentage?
Yep.
All of them.
Really?
Any teacher I ask, that's the answer. They will say, I want all of my students to learn a year in a year's time.
Yeah. Is that what we see in the evidence?
Absolutely not. Unless it is a district that has been using that metric for a while and has strong support for Tier 1 instruction in place. Then I do see it. I see some instances where it's 100%. More likely around 80. Like that seems to be a number that is achievable, meaning 80% of the room has that metric of maintaining or increasing the percentile, which is, interestingly, going all the way back to the MTSS
going
model.
all the way back, yeah.
It sounds familiar. It's kind of what we expect, roughly. It's obviously we're talking in averages, but when Tier 1 instruction is solid, about 80% of students respond. I think that's how it's supposed to work. And I think that is what we see in those places that we've identified that do have a strong focus on Tier 1 instruction and are looking at that metric.
And are supporting
Absolutely
skillful instruction. I don't want
Doesn't
to fall
happen
into the trap
magically.
of
No.
we just look at the data and it gets better. There are people
Absolutely
that are
not.
informing their practice based on what they see in the evidence.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the question, right? That people should be able to answer. Is my Tier 1 instruction effective? And I hear you saying a way to answer that question is what percentage of my students are growing a year's material in a year's time? Or said another way, maintain their percentile ranking or increase it. No scale scores needed. No rainbow charts needed. No lookup, nothing. I mean, if you know where their percentile ranking was at the end of last year, where is it now?
Yeah.
That's progress or regress. I'm curious, though, if I'm a teacher and I see a lot of students whose percentile rankings are going backward, does that mean I'm not teaching them anything?
Well, that's when the skill score might come in handy again.
How so?
If I went to the skill score and I saw that it is increasing, then I would say they know more about the content on the whole than they did before. However, a scale score can increase while the percentile decreases. And this is one that kind of makes people's head explode sometimes.
At first,
At
right?
first,
I mean, once you
right.
get your arms around it, like I've heard you offer this example of kids running around a track. If you think about learning as running, and everybody's running around the track. But some kids are running more quickly than others, in our example, learning more quickly than others. And those kids start lapping other kids. Like their scale scores go past the kids that they were behind initially. Those kids' percentile rankings, their ranking on the field, on the track, goes up.
Yeah.
Right? But everybody's running. Like every kid's learning something, their scale scores are going up. Their percentile rankings.
Right.
Their position in the pack might be going down.
Yep.
And that's, it goes unknown, right?
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah. That gets back to the what is good. So, okay, this kid's scale score went up 12 points, but everybody else in their peer group went up 25. And so suddenly, that
12
was
doesn't feel good
progress,
anymore.
but it wasn't maybe where they should have been.
Yeah.
So, that's when you that's the regression relative to peers.
So I guess the important thing, lots of important things here, but an important thing to remember about percentile rankings is that they have to be interpreted differently than scale scores.
Right.
If you see a scale score going down over time, that's problematic.
Right.
I mean, that really does, setting aside the standard error measure of the instrument that's being used here, it does mean the student demonstrated less knowledge of the content than they did the last time they assessed. That's a problem.
Right.
And that would be an example of if, God forbid, that were to be happening across a classroom, those students are literally moving backward.
Right.
And it's happened. It doesn't happen often.
It's rare.
At all.
It's very rare. Yeah.
going backward in terms of percentile rankings, importantly, means a different thing. It doesn't mean that they're not learning. It means they're not learning quickly enough, which might mean that their instruction is not as effective as we would hope, right?
Right. So one of the things that, or another element of this is the maintaining of a percentile is not actually the whole story when we're talking about effectiveness of teaching. It's the first.
What?
It's the first thing to look at. However, if we have a heterogeneous classroom where we have students who came in to their prior year percentile was in the 1st through 10th percentile, and then we have students in the same classroom who are coming in at the 90th percentile or higher. That happens.
It happens all the time.
We see these
all the time,
evenly distributed, and I think it happens intentionally. You know, like this is fair. Everybody gets a few students who are coming in below grade level and a few students who are above and a bunch in the middle. That seems fair. However, when we start to look at monitoring percentiles over time, we see that students who are coming in at those low percentile rankings, if they are meeting that goal of a typical amount, learning a typical amount, learning a year's material, which means they maintain their percentile, they are always going to be in the 8th percentile or whatever they came in at, right? Which in Florida, at least, we can map that to a level 1. Like that's a student who is well below grade level, you know, in need of attention, right? And we do have some goalposts. Like we do want to help students master content. Like that's where we're getting them to. And it might not happen in a year, but over time, with effective instruction, we should be able to overcome some of those things and get them on grade level. That's kind of at a minimum the goal. And it's possible. We see it happen all the time. So for those students who are coming in below grade level, we need them to grow more than a year in a year's time. Like they're catching up. They're coming from behind in that race.
They need to lap a few other kids.
They need to lap a few other kids. Yeah. And that takes a different kind of instruction. Like the instruction has to be a little bit different for the students who are in that scenario. The content, the grade level content is what it is. Like, that's not what I don't mean that needs to be different, but the way in which those students access the grade level content.
So this goes to a jargony term, differentiation.
Exactly.
Figuring out how
do we scaffold for those students?
Another jargony term.
It is.
Yes.
But it's helpful to me. Like to me, it's very descriptive,
yep.
right? You're giving them some tools to get to the content.
And I feel like what you're getting at in this, the light bulb that went off for me, you're getting to the second part of the essential question. Going all the way back to the beginning. It's not just, is my tier 1 instruction effective, but
for whom?
For whom?
Yeah.
Right? A problem and dealing in averages all the time is that we miss nuance.
Yeah.
And just coming up with a binary, it's the second time we've talked about binaries and percent threes and higher, like, you know, it's not a satisfactory metric by itself. If we're just dealing in averages and saying yes, no in a classroom, we're missing some very important information because that instruction might be serving some kids on the academic spectrum well, whichever end of it, but it might not be serving other students well. I feel like that's where you're going,
absolutely.
Right?
And it happens on both ends of the spectrum equally. Like we see
always,
you know, there's those students who have to, they have to catch up. And to be honest, I think at least in Florida, we have done a really good job on focusing on that group of kids.
Lowest performing quartile, for example.
Through policy that has come into play, and then the supports then that have come in through funding, and, you know, making sure that like the tier 3 interventions are happening. That has helped a lot of students access the content and move more quickly.
For sure.
That has been a really good thing. However, what we've seen that really goes unnoticed is the students who are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum coming in. They have already mastered content. So
you're talking high level 3, level 4, level 5, 70th percentile and up.
Yeah, students who are 70th, 80th, 90th percentile, they can, over the course of a year, have instruction that results to to losing ground with their peers, right? Like they're not being pushed to the full depth of what they could do with the grade level content.
Yeah.
And so, they can kind of slip back. And we see it in the data when we look across multiple years and follow kids. We can see that they are kind of, we call
Right.
it the stealthy regression. Like
it's only regression and percentile ranking. And
Exactly.
since nobody looks at percentile ranking, what
That's
we're
why it's
actually
stealthy.
doing, this is kind of something that Florida did not get right, in my opinion. And that is how they treat learning gains
Right.
for students who are at or above grade level, right? Because they're celebrating growth of one single scale score point in a year.
Right.
And assigning a learning gain to that student, which for those of people who are listening that don't understand Florida's school accountability model, learning gains is half of it for ELA and math. And those points matter a lot. The lowest quartile gets counted twice. Like everybody in Florida knows how that formula works. Anyway, so all they need is a point. And if the typical growth for a student on that assessment is 5 or 6 scale score points in a year, you can conclude pretty quickly that while that student maybe earned a learning gain, their scale score went up, their percentile ranking went down.
Right.
And that can happen year after year after year. Still earn a learning gain. Eventually, they're not on grade level
They're
anymore.
not anymore.
Eventually, they're
All of a
level
sudden,
2.
they come on the radar, and it's usually in middle school.
Right. So I've heard you talk about that effect as churn, right?
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with which students in your classroom are being served well or not well,
Yeah.
if you don't understand that the thing that should be celebrated really is this outsized growth, that is increase in percentile rankings for the level 1 and 2 kids, you see that, are grateful for that, but what you don't realize is that you've got all of these kids that are above grade level that are marching backward.
Right.
And where that really, we've talked about that for a long time. I haven't seen it land with people until you built in that exercise where groups of people would calculate their churn. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you'll talk about that for a minute. What do you get people to do, and why did you design that the way you did?
So we have a visual that shows for any given classroom or grade level in a school, shows the number of students who came into the year, meaning their prior year achievement level was what their level was. So the number of students at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and it's listed in a chart. So they know how many students there are. And then next to it, there's a column that shows them the percentage of students in that achievement level, who came into that achievement level.
Cohort.
Yeah, so in that cohort, who reached that goalpost of level 3 or higher by the end of the year. Okay,
or even middle of the year.
We can look at it at the middle of the year. Yep. Yeah. So are they projected to meet that goal, or did they actually meet that goal? And we it seems a little tedious, but we have them actually do some math. So there's a cohort number, like an n size, right, for each level, and then there's a percentage who achieve level 3 or higher, and we have them multiply them. Okay, so how many of the level 1 students reached that level 3? And so maybe there's 14 level 1 students, and 8% of them reached level 3.
Kid.
So one kid got over the line.
Which should be celebrated, by the way.
Absolutely.
Especially
that's
if the
lot
average
of
growth for those level 1 students was high, meaning percentile rankings as a whole were going up significantly.
Yeah.
Like, this is great news. I don't mean to...
Absolutely. They had to go up 40 percentile points to get there.
Huge.
Right? It's huge growth. Level 2. Okay, these are students who are coming in right below grade level. Let's say there's also 14 of them. I'm making these numbers up. Reached level 3. So, okay, we got another couple of kids maybe who hit that threshold. Okay, so we got 3. All right, let's look at the level 3 kids. The
This
kids
is where
who
it gets
were
interesting.
already on grade level when they came into the room.
Yeah.
Now we've had a year of instruction. What is it now? Oh, 50%. Okay, so there were 18 kids, because that's usually where the majority of the kids come in and are at level 3. So 18 kids, 50% of them hit the level 3 mark at the end of the year. What's that math? 9. So we gained 3 and we lost 9. That's what happened. Like that's a churn, right? Like our resources, our focus went to helping the lowest level learners, and those kids, some of them really benefited from it. At the same time, students who already had the content were not being pushed adequately and fell below. And so now they're going to be the ones in need of that intervention the next year, right? Like it's so that they it's like a whack-a-mole situation. And sometimes the churn is not that extreme. That example is more extreme. 3 got over and 9 fell back. But a lot of times it's like 5 and 4. 5 and 4.
That's the example I want to tug on a little, because I find it actually the more compelling example, because it explains why this feels the way it feels.
Right.
Which is we are working so hard.
Right.
And feel like we're doing
never
good
move
work.
the needle.
And yet the metric that people use to determine if it's a good school or a not good school, for example, I'm talking about proficiency rates, right? Or, and even worse case, a good teacher or not good teacher. I'm using that term intentionally. I bristle. We got to be careful about language. It matters, especially in terms of how it lands with people, the very people that we're trying to inform, influence, persuade. Got to be respectful. Anyway, sometimes percent proficient is conflated with effectiveness, right? If this teacher has 85% students proficient. In some schools, many schools, they set all of their goals around increasing that metric, percent proficient, all the SMART goals they set, school improvement plans, it's all around that. And it's exhausting. And at the end of the year, they, again, feel like they did really great work, and it didn't move, or it even went down some. And what we are trying to help people understand is that our system is designed for that to happen.
Right.
What we are seeing in the data is that all of this attention on the level 1 and 2 students is in fact having its desired effect. And that's not the problem. That's to be celebrated, as you've mentioned. The problem is that it appears to be taking place at the expense of the students
who come in.
The unintended consequence, who were already above grade level or at grade level, those students are moving backward.
Right.
And sometimes that's happening at exactly the same rate or very close to the same rate. And so it feels like we didn't do anything. Yeah. Like we didn't move the
We had 52% and now we have 52.5%.
And the thing is that to say we didn't move the needle, again, lacks some important context and nuance. We moved the needle a lot with a couple populations of students, which is great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we moved the needle a lot in the other direction for another group of students. And that, to me, informs what do we do about this? Like, what can we do differently as a grade level planning team, as a teacher, to ensure that effect is minimized going forward? And to me, that's powerful insight, really powerful insight. But you can't get to that insight unless you can answer the question.
Right.
Is my tier 1 instruction effective, and for whom? Both. We got to be able to answer both. And I think you've done a delightful job of explaining how percentile rankings and attaching to prior year and averaging those things and then categorizing them by kids. Like, I feel like people know now this is a way to do it. You don't need our visuals to do it. You just have to let go of the let go of the scale score. Use the percentile ranking, anchor to the prior year. There is a lot of math involved, right, to get it all to work out. But you'll start seeing it. And I think once people see it and can appreciate that, hey, we can change this pattern. We can do something different here. We can differentiate, right? The jargony term, we can figure out how to serve all of the students in the classroom equally well. Then the churn doesn't happen to nearly the same degree, and the needle will move. Those proficiency rates will go up. So there you have it. Thanks. I feel like you landed the plane. Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for listening today. If you are interested in learning more about K12 Lift and what we do, visit our website at k12lift.com.